Top Fuel Dragsters,
Funny Cars,
Pro Stocks,
Pro Stock Motorcycle,
all integral parts of the world's fastest motorsport, NHRA Winston Championship Drag Racing. In the next 2 hours, you'll relive the traveling acceleration show that was Drag Racing 95.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland.
And I'm Steve Evans. You know, Mac, the 1995 NHRA Winston drag racing season was full of a lot of action. Always is, but a ton of surprises.
Well, there were elapsed time and mile-an-hour records set in every pro category.
And unfortunately, Mother Nature played a huge role. We were the rainmakers of 95. Seems like we had 30 races instead of 19.
Well, it seemed like to me there was about a season and a half throughout 95, but it was definitely action-packed, and it all got started right here at Pomona. Well, the Fairplex is kind of quiet right now, but things started with a bang in Drag Racing 95.
The first weekend in February, the Chief Winter Nationals, and all eyes were on 20-something Larry Dixon, rookie top fuel driver, taking over the reins from Don the Snake Prudhomme in the Miller Genuine Draft Car. Certainly there was pressure on Dixon, but also on the Snake himself. Had he made the right choice?
That question, of course, came to mind just a couple of weeks earlier in a test session at Bakersfield, California. The car left the starting line in fine style, but as it approached the finish, one of those devastating crashes that can occur in top fuel. Larry Dixon came out A-OK. Don Prudhomme was most concerned, and Dixon started off the race in fine style, coming up against Connie Coletta.
This was in Snake's 1994 car, the only one they had in the shop. A supercharger explosion. A lot of firsts for Larry Dixon. His first crash before the season began, that was his first big boomer.
But he went 472 at 292 miles an hour as the crew worked in the pits. It certainly established Dixon as one of the strong favorites.
But 95 wasn't the first time we heard the Dixon name here at Pomona. Back in 1970 on ABC's Wide World of Sports, his father Larry Dixon beat Tony Nancy in the Top Fuel final. Larry was only 3 years old and really doesn't have any memories of that. This is the only video that I know exists. 3-year-old Larry Dixon and his handsome father. You can see where he get his looks from.
Continuing on in top fuel, Larry Dixon in round number 2 raced Shelly Anderson.
And the result was the same as over Coletta. Dixon wins another one and goes to his first ever semifinal round.
This time he ran 486, and his opponent in the semifinal round matchup at the Winter Nationals would be none other than Scott Coletta, the reigning Winston champ, trying to put his American International Airways car into the winner's circle again. Dick LaHaye, the crew chief, the master of top fuel, as so many of the other racers and crew chiefs say.
In the fuel pits, Dick LaHaye is God. Here you can see one of the reasons why. Wes Cerny, Prudhomme's crew chief, apparently overpowered the racetrack. LaHaye had the balance, and Coletta went to the finals at 480, 300 miles an hour. Who would he meet in that final round? Well, it would be either Eddie Hill, the Texan, the Pennzoil Special, a resurging Eddie Hill, getting the kind of season opener he really dreamed of, up against Mike Dunn, Daryl Dunn's La Victoria car.
And by a car length, Eddie Hill moved into the finals, a great 489 at 298 miles an hour. But the lane choice went to Scott Coletta, even though Eddie Hill celebrated that round win.
So could Scott Coletta, the reigning Winston champ, won it all in 94, start up the season with another big win? No! Much like Larry Dixon, he too up in tire smoke in the near lane. Eddie Hill won the Winter Nationals.
What a celebration on the starting line. Fuzzy Carter and crew began the year in fine style.
I'm getting in on the hugging down here. 93 put a tear in this man's eye and a prayer on her lips, and it's all paid off. They've won their first Winter National.
Oh, we sure have, and now we're #1 in points, and we got momentum, and all the new stuff works great. And I bet Pennzoil and Detroit Gasket and Traders are proud of us tonight. What do you think?
I think so.
And I think there'll be a party somewhere in Texas tonight, too.
There might be one in California.
There was a new point structure instituted at the Winter Nationals. You got 100 points if you won the race, and you can see the way you earned them throughout the rest of the rounds of competition. Basically, it was the same as last year. They just dropped off the last 0, Steve.
Well, in funny car, all eyes obviously were on John Force, the big number 1 on his car, trying to do something in 95 no driver had done before, win 5 Winston Funny Car titles.
For Force in his Castrol GTX, now Pontiac car, he had as an opponent in the first round the surprising Dale Creasy with Gary Bolger up.
John always says, Bolger scares me to death because he's so overdue to win one. Well, he terrified him at Pomona as Bolger scored a huge upset, beating Force with a 5:31 at 278. Force's old hound dog was just a dog.
Number 4 in the Winston Chase in 1994, Chuck Etchells brought his Kendall GT1 Dodge Avenger to Pomona with one goal in mind, and that was to defeat John Force. Well, Gary Bolger took care of Force in round 1. The dream ended rather quickly as Bolger crossed over the center line in the shutdown area. A great 5:12 for Etchells at 285.
And it was at Pomona we first welcomed Joe Gibbs to the drag racing fold. Super Bowl winning football coach, Winston Cup winning race car team owner, and his season started with Cruz Pedregon at the wheel of the Joe Gibbs-owned McDonald's Pontiac.
His opponent in the semifinal round at Pomona was none other than Al Hoffman, the driver of the Western Auto Slick 50 Pontiac. What a race it was in the semis. It was Cruz Pedregon taking the win at a 5:14 at 296 miles an hour, and a big hug from the coach.
Everybody's been talking about Force going to win all these races. I'm not bragging, but he's got to deal with the McDonald's car.
Well, the McDonald's car was the opponent for the Kendall car in the finals at the Chief Auto Parts Winter Nationals. Pedregon and Etchells.
Pedregon was the underdog here. Etchells had lane choice, but you saw on board with Etchells, big problems. He shut it off. Pedregon finally shut it off too. But as the winner, 5:30, 278 miles an hour.
What is traditional in pro football? Of course, when you win the game, you get doused with water. Drag racing the same. That's exactly what happened to Coach Joe Gibbs at Pomona.
Well, Gibbs wasn't the only celebrity at the Winter Nationals. Jay Leno just about blew up everything Mark Powick owned in this stunt for the Tonight Show, but Powick didn't even mind. He had so much fun. In fact, he was there in the audience when the piece aired. Scott Jeffrey on the Dodge boys, Darrell Alderman, they picked up where they left off in 94 at the Winter Nationals.
Scott Jeffrey on at the wheel of the Dodge Avenger was challenged by the king of the Oldsmobiles, Warren Johnson, in his GM Performance Parts car. The 500 cubic inch maximum displacement engines went through a very slow, methodical staging procedure, and then the tree went green. Jeffrey on into the finals at a 7:08, 195 mile an hour speed.
I knew we were going to have to give it everything we had. We gambled a little bit with the car, but I shouldn't say we gambled, because guys from Wayne County, they got a lot of knowledge. They don't do much gambling, but it was awesome. It really made a good run. It made it the best run of the day. Actually, my best run of the weekend. What a good time for it to happen.
A good time was had by all, including the guy that won the Winston Championship in 1994. This is Darrell Alderman sitting inside the other half of the Dodge team, the Avenger, driven by Darrell.
Well, Joe Gibbs showed up with more than just a funny car. How about the McDonald's Pontiac debuting? Jim Yates, the Virginia driver, at the wheel, and he met up with Alderman in the semifinal round.
Joe Gibbs showing the same amount of interest in all three of his cars, Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock. Alderman goes across the finish line at a 7:06, 196 miles an hour, which in turn sets up an all-Dodge final with Alderman getting the lane choice. One of the best camera angles in all of motorsports. showed you Darrell Alderman shifted through the gears to a 7:05 victory over teammate Jeffrion.
It's a darn good thing you had a 7:05 because your partner over there welded you a bit on the lights.
Yeah, I could see he got out on me a little bit there. This car's been spinning a little bit in low gear, but it really comes on about 300 feet, and he's been cutting the tree down all day long.
Scott, run in here real quick. It looks like a war again between you two guys, maybe for a championship.
Well, I don't know, but us Dodge boys are having a lot of fun out here today, so it just ended up a little different than I wanted, but hey, it's in the team.
The smiles on the faces of the Dodge boys. We'll track that action throughout the season. The next race in Drag Racing 95, Phoenix and the ATSCO Nationals.
Shelly Anderson towed over from her home base in Ontario, California, hoping for a better event than she enjoyed in Pomona in the Western Auto Haviland Dragster. The national record holder at the time ran up against Kenny Bernstein in round number 2. And there's an old saying that Bernstein hates, that he can't beat a blonde.
He's had more trouble with female Top Fuel drivers in terms of competition on the racetrack than practically any other driver. And guess what? It happened again at Phoenix. It was Shelly with a great 475 at 301 miles an hour. That advanced her into the semifinals. Also in round number 2 competition, it was the Team McDonald's car out of Joe Gibbs Racing with Corey McClelland at the wheel. His opponent, his longtime rival, good buddy, and practical joker friend, Scott Coletta.
Scott Coletta, crew chief Dick LaHaye, car owner Connie Coletta, the American International's Airway Special. You recall, it was just a few minutes ago, we saw Eddie Hill take care of Scott at Pomona. Coletta was on fire big time, never lifted, trying to stay with Corey Mack. Couldn't do it. McClelland's 482 at 299 miles an hour took him to the semis.
Here is what it looked like in replay. You can see a blazer out of the American International Airways car, but Scott out in front of the blaze, came through absolutely uninjured. The only damage to Connie's pocketbook and maybe Scott's ego, because he was not in the semis. It was Blaine Johnson at the wheel of the Travers Tool Company car having to challenge Larry Dixon.
Blaine's sophomore season of Top Fuel Racing, and a lot of the pundits were saying this could be dangerous. He may be ready to take on guys like Don the Snake Prudhomme. But was Larry Dixon ready for his second event of his career?
The answer more than obvious. A 4.80 at 295 miles an hour. Larry Dixon goes into the final round for his second race in a row.
In the semifinals, it was Corey McClelland then up against Shelly Anderson. Anderson near lane. They left right together until Corey Mack smoked the tires. Shelly Anderson to the finals at 482.95, but some engine problems were discovered later on in the pits, and they thrashed and put a new bullet in it between rounds, and look who's right in the thick of it. It was Shelly Anderson. She could do anything needed on this race car.
So the final round found Larry Dixon up against a rejuvenated Shelly Anderson after all the pit work. Anderson blew the tires off of it. Larry Dixon ran 482. Don Prudhomme was happy.
How about this kid? Is he cool?
The pressure is off. The big win to Larry Dixon. And Don Prudhomme, with a smile on his face, comes away from the Phoenix race with the points lead. Dixon ahead of Eddie Hill. Scott Coletta and Shelly Anderson round out the rest.
Tom Hoover has always had an affinity for this Phoenix quarter mile, the Pioneer Electronics funny car. In fact, his last national event victory came right here in Arizona. He was up against Cruz Perdigon in round number 1. Perdigon indeed looking to make it 2 in a row for Coach Gibbs.
Problems for Perdigon. You saw the flash come out of the right-hand headers. It was Tom Hoover with a fine 524 and 287 win to go to round number 2.
Phoenix for John Forrest was a very trying weekend. There were allegations of cheating on his part. His car was thoroughly inspected by NHRA, deemed to be legal. Al Hoffman was one of the prime protagonists against Force, and the two of them met in the semis, and Force got a little bit of a revenge there. Put him away with a 5:12 at 296 miles an hour. John Force said, I don't need to cheat. I tell you what, the competition better beat John Force when he's down, or he'll fire a 5:12 at you when he's up.
I told you. I mean, we're going back right now. We know they're going to strip search us. We don't care. We ain't cheating. Want to tell the fans we ain't doing nothing illegal for the fans. Check my hot rod. There ain't nothing wrong with her. We're just struggling, that's all. But for the sponsors, we're okay.
Ooh, that was a television first.
Well, John has his own way of proving a point, and I think he sort of made it there that there wasn't even anything hidden inside his fire suit that could be deemed illegal.
I think he's just looking for an underwear sponsor. In the final round, it was Force against Hoover. Force, who had struggled mightily in qualifying. As you saw, ran that 5:12 in the semis.
And look at him go here in the final round to a 5:05, 298 win over Tom Hoover.
You know what, by all rights, we shouldn't be doing this interview. You should have been gone round one, at least by round two, but here you are.
I told Coyle in the car, I said, I feel like we already won. We didn't even have a right to be here the way this car ran. But you know what, Steve? Even I was losing a little faith. Coyle and Bernie showed me what they had. I'm proud of them. The Castrol, Jolly Rancher, the Wax Shop, Pontiac, of course, and it's really a Pontiac, Steve. My boys are the best. They can race with anybody, and I love them. And Fram Arlight, we're still playing ball.
Certified legal car, runs 5:05.
An absolutely impressive win by John Force gave him the points lead after Phoenix, followed by Hoffman, Pedregon, Etchels, and Jim Epler, number 5.
During the off-season, 10-time Winston Pro Stock champ Bob Glidden had emergency open heart surgery, but he showed up in Arizona looking trim and running quickly. His only problem was his eldest son, Billy, was running even quicker in the Winnebago Ford owned by Harold Stout. One of Glidden's old race cars came back to haunt him.
Both Fords, both powered by Glidden-developed power plants. This was round number 1 at the ATSCO Nationals at Phoenix. Problems set in right off the starting line for Bob Glidden. Bill Glidden crossed the finish line at a 7:09, 195-mile-an-hour burst.
Warren Johnson, who was embarrassed by the Dodge boys at Pomona, going out in the semifinal round, hoped that wouldn't happen at Phoenix. He encountered Bill Glidden. Glidden near lane, Johnson far side. Glidden all over the racetrack, but he still pulled it out with a 7:13, 194-mile-an-hour win to go to the semifinals at the ATSCO Nationals.
His opponent in that round was Jerry Ekman, driving the bright yellow machine, the Pennzoil Pontiac. He and his partner Bill Orndorff trying to stop the onslaught of Bill Glidden. And Bill stopped it himself. As you see, the red light on the screen indicated to Bill that he was a loser the minute he let the clutch out.
One thing we knew for sure at Phoenix, we wouldn't have an all-Dodge final because Darrell Alderman and Scott Jeffrey on met up in the Final Four. Alderman near lane, Jeffrey on far side. A really good drag race. And it was Alderman going to the final round at a 7:10, 194 miles an hour. Let's have another look at that finish, Mac.
Oh, look how close this was. Just about a foot and a half separated the two cars at the end of 1,320 feet. The teammates congratulating and consoling one another.
They split the prize money right down the middle, so that salves the wound a little bit. The final round, the yellow Pennzoil Pontiac, Jerry Ekman, wheels in the air. It looked for an instant like he might get to Alderman, but at the stripe, Ekman faded. Alderman, second win in a row, 7:07, 194 miles an hour.
Well, the point standings after Phoenix in Pro Stock. The Dodge boys at the top of the list with Darrell Alderman, number 1, Jerry Ekman's 3rd, WJ 4th, and Jim Yates in the number 5 slot.
See all that brown stuff down there in the ground in Houston at the Slick 50 Nationals presented by Western Auto? That was mud. In fact, the weekend was a washout. We came back the following weekend, and it had lost none of its luster. Number 1 qualifier in Top Fuel was Blaine Johnson. His brother Alan really getting that car figured out.
His opponent in round number 1 was Jim Head at the wheel of the Smokin' Joe's car, and Head took advantage of the loss of traction by Blaine, running 495 at 288 miles an hour.
Well, Shelly Anderson, who had a pretty decent outing in Phoenix, hoped for the same or better in Houston. Top fuel round number 1. She met up against another blonde, Lori Johns.
Watch Shelly. A huge engine explosion. That let Lori Johns in the Gary Sharp car advance another round. But there was serious engine damage here. The supercharger basically disintegrated.
Also in round number 1, Mike Dunn and Daryl Blinslaw Victoria Salsa car. No one works harder than Mike. He not only drives the car, he is the clutch man in the organization, and there's few things more important than that. And in round number 1, he ran up against the rookie phenom, as the press was beginning to call Larry Dixon. But nothing phenomenal about Dixon at Houston. He went out round number 1 to Mike Dunn's 480, 304 miles an hour, which led us to the king of speed, Kenny Bernstein. The last race of the year in '94, he ran 314 miles an hour.
Well, the weather conditions on that second weekend in Houston lent themselves to big speed, and we saw it in the match between Bernstein and Corey McClelland in round number 1.
This would later be named the fastest side-by-side race at Houston. Bernstein's 479, 311 whips up on Corey Mack's 303 mile an hour pass. And that led to a top fuel final of Kenny Bernstein and Mike Dunn.
These two drivers had worked their way through eliminations, and Bernstein may have wished for some more of that 311 mile an hour speed. He smoked the tires. Mike Dunn, consistent 480s, won him the race, 485 at 296. And down at the far end of the racetrack, a guy who doesn't smile all that much, Frank Bradley, the beard, over to offer his congratulations to Mike Dunn, the driver.
And Larry Dixon would learn at Houston, it's not good to go out round 1. It hurts you in the points. Mike Dunn took over the lead, followed by Dixon, Coletta, Bernstein, and Eddie Hill.
Round number 2 of Funny Car at Houston. The McDonald's Pontiac Cruz Pedregon against John Force. Picking up where he left off at Phoenix, a 5:05 at 3:01. Force advanced.
Force, you're just like an old prize fighter. They get you against the ropes and you just battle back.
I love that kid. That kid makes my life. It's like racing him final round inning. My legs are shaking so bad I can't stand here. But my old heap went out for it because I'm right on. Cruz Cole said he even ran deep. She probably would have ran into Force. But I was after him because I know where he goes. And he's going to ruin my life. But she hiked the front about 300 feet. My feet are still shaking. What's wrong with them? They are.
Steve, did you understand all of that?
I speak John Force, 3 different dialects, as a matter of fact. In the semifinals, could Al Hoffman get a little revenge on John for the drubbing he gave him at Phoenix?
And the answer, yes. John Force used up way too much of the racetrack. Hoffman went a 5:13 to go to the finals.
Boy, that has been a long time coming.
It sure has. Western Auto Slick 50, I couldn't be happier. This is super. You know, I mean, come here to our sponsors race and get rid of Force, move into the number 1 spot, take over the points lead. What more could you ask for?
Lane choice, you got that too.
That'll work.
And that lane choice was over. Mark Oswald at the wheel of Bill Schultz's In-N-Out Burger Dodge.
Tommy Anderson, the crew chief for Al Hoffman, was not going to be denied. This was his kind of a racetrack. A lot of teeth and decent air. Hoffman won Houston. 5:20 at 293 miles an hour.
There's no denying the fact that Hoffman and crew know how to celebrate a win. It was under the lights on a Friday night at Houston in qualifying that Warren Johnson of the GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile set the drag racing world on its ear. This was the quickest and fastest time ever, 6:94 at 199 miles an hour plus. A new national ET and national speed record.
And that got the attention of Larry Morgan, the Castrol Super Clean Oldsmobile. He now knew what he was up against in round number 2 when he faced off with the Professor W.J. Morgan, right-hand side of your screen, Johnson left. They ran away from the camera, and Morgan ran away from Warren Johnson, if you can believe that. A 7:09 at 194 miles an hour. It advanced Larry Morgan to the final 4.
Also in round number 2, it was Bill Glidden against Darrell Alderman. And here the Ford of Glidden recorded a 6-second elapsed time, a 6:99 at 197 miles an hour plus to put away the Winston champ and relegate him to signing autographs for the rest of the day.
And also becoming a fan of his teammate Scott Jeffrey. Jeffrey had some problems before the semi. The car was started. Dave Hutchins, one of the co-crew chiefs, got in there, resolved whatever it was, and it was Glidden against Jeffrey on.
And the big win going to Jeffrey on at a 7:03.
What was going on with this car in the starting line?
Actually, the shift linkage, after I did the burnout, it was jammed and it wouldn't go back into first gear. You know, when I was backing up, we have a lockout on the transmission and it just wouldn't go back, so we fixed that. My guys fixed it. Wayne County, you know, the best in the business.
Somebody had to take care of that pesky Glidden boy.
I'll tell you, boy, he's doing a heck of a job. He's unbelievable. But I'll say this, you know, I had to work awful hard to get to my first final, and I don't want him to think that this is easy out here in Pro Stock Eliminator, so somebody's got to beat up on him.
Well, Scott Jeffrey on took the measure of Glidden at the event in Houston. Here's the finals. It was Jim Yates in the McDonald's Pontiac up against Jeffrey on in the Dodge. What a great shot from inside as Jeffrey on went through the gears to the win, a 7:06 at 196.
If one of the Dodges doesn't get you, the other one will. Great job.
Thanks a lot, Steve. This is for my wife, Amy, at home. If you think it's a job out here driving this Mopar Parts Dodge Avenger, try raising two under 3 years old. Believe me, I see what a real job is when I get home.
In the Winston points chase, Scott Jeffrey on drew a little bit closer to Darrell Alderman. Yates, Johnson, and Ekman round out the top five.
Well, unfortunately, Gainesville, Florida became Rainsville, Florida. The Mac Tools Gator Nationals, much like Houston, rained out on its original date, but we came back a week later, and Mac, it was more than worth the wait, especially in top fuel.
Look at those blue skies. The crowd that came back thoroughly enjoyed themselves. This was round number 2 of Top Fuel. Corey Mack in the near lane, Mike Dunn in the far lane. Dunn's hope for 2 in a row fell to the 484 by Corey Mack, a 502 for Mike Dunn, and he was out of here.
The McDonald's Digger in the final 4 up against Larry Dixon. Dixon went out round number 1 at Houston, fell to number 2 in the points, but at Gainesville, he was absolutely flawless, including this 4.78 second elapsed time at 296 miles an hour. There was more in the Snake's car. For the second race in a row, Mac, Blade and Alan Johnson qualified number 1 at Gainesville.
And that almost became habit forming during 1995. Their opponent in the semifinal round, Scott Coletta. And the win, a very close race. Blade Johnson, a 488 to 298, the speed. Look at this, at the finish line, the margin of victory was 8 thousandths of a second. Blaine Johnson pulled it out by, old cliche, the skin of his teeth.
So the family from Santa Maria, California, Blaine Johnson up against Larry Dixon in the final. Dixon, who won Phoenix, would win at Gainesville, putting out the number 1 qualifier at a near record pace, 473, 302 miles an hour. The Snake and Wes Cerny were delirious at the other end of the racetrack. The Snake's so proud of this young man that, well, he kind of helped raise him, really, from the time he was about 16 years of age.
And Dixon vaults into the points lead. Mike Dunn second, Scott Coletta third.
In funny car qualifying, this was Englishman Norm Wilding, who we don't see all that often on the NHRA Tour. He wished he hadn't come to Gainesville. It's not over yet. Wilding, now unconscious in the automobile, a helpless passenger would take yet another hard lick. The safety safari roared in mass on this one. Not only was Wilding unconscious, the race car was hurt beyond any repair possibilities. That was the least of our concerns at this point. It just continued to evolve. That was raw fuel exploding. The safety safari cooling everything down. Wilding was transferred to the hospital by helicopter, which is always on the scene. Was pronounced okay after a couple of days and went back to England to try to raise the funds to do this all over again.
Dean Scusa is a rising star in funny car competition at the wheel of the Matco Tools Pontiac. He met up with round number 2 with Al Hoffman.
Hoffman steadily gaining Winston points, keeping John Force awake at night. But Dean Scusa, the drummer boy from Cleveland, Ohio, upset Hoffman's plans in Florida. Lance Larson, his crew chief, said, "We'll take it." A 523, 280-mile-an-hour wind in the second round of funny cars.
It was the Scusa against the Cruiser in the semifinals. And look at this, another big upset at Gainesville. Scusa running 527 at 285 to put away Pedregon.
The John Force crew thought they had everything all put together right, went to test fire it. There was a problem internally, had to tear it all apart again, and to the fans' delight, just barely made it to the starting line in time to face off with young Dean Scusa.
The dream ended there for Dean Scusa, 516 at 291 miles an hour. And again, John Force's crew came through in the clutch. Austin Coyle, Bernie Federley, and the whole gang keep John Force in the lead over Hoffman, Pedregon. Scusa moving up to 4th in the Winston standings after Gainesville.
Warren Johnson, the GM Performance Parts Oldsmobile, set the national record in Houston at 694. Round 2, he met his own son. You could visually see Warren was tardy at the lights. Kurt had a .460. WJ became the first Pro Stock driver to ever lose with a 6-second elapsed time, 6:99. I was down at the other end, and he was physically ill.
Mark Powick at the wheel of the Summit Racing Oldsmobile calls himself the Cowboy, and if you ever hear him hoop and holler after he wins one of these events, you'll understand why. It was round number 2. He challenged Scott Jeffrey on. And the challenge more than adequate as he pulled out the win with a 707 at 195 miles an hour.
You know, we struggled a little bit the first round, but it made a good lap there, and my driving game's on today, and first semis of the year, I love it.
Did he make a mistake letting you stage last?
I don't know. I've been watching Scott a little bit lately, and sometimes you got to play the other foot, you know?
Great job.
Thank you.
See what I mean? There's nothing like that.
This was a race we'd remember for a long time. You'll soon see why. Powick against Larry Morgan. Morgan far side. It's a good thing we got electronic timing devices because that one was won. Well, let's have another look at it. You can see really how close it was as we'll stop it right on the finish line for you. That is what 1/1000th of a second looks like. That was the net win time.
The final round, Dodge against Oldsmobile. Darrell Alderman and Mark Powick. Powick having problems, fell back from the middle of the race on, giving the win to Alderman, who turned a great 7:03 elapsed time.
And Steve, I'd like to dedicate this race to Mike Moe and David Hutchins, his father, from back in Fairfield, Illinois. As a matter of fact, all the fine folks from Fairfield, Illinois.
Darrell Alderman and Scott Jeffrey on Stay on Top. WJ's 3rd, Jim Yates 4th, Jerry Ekman number 5 in the Winston Points chase.
We always look forward to the Winston Select Invitational. It's not about points, it's about money. Buckets full of Winston's money. Drag racing's all-star event, really. At Rockingham Dragway, Steve Irwin and Roy Hill have done a great job of rehabilitating this facility.
They have made this into a national event caliber racetrack, as was proven in the semifinals when Larry Dixon whipped up on Mike Dunn with a 4:76 elapsed time. Scott Coletta in the other half of the ladder came up in the semifinal round against Corey McClelland. This is a rivalry that is beginning to match John Force and Al Hoffman.
And bragging rights here went to Scott Coletta as he put away McClelland with a 489, 295 miles an hour. Now, this is only an 8-car show, or was only an 8-car show, so it only took 3 rounds to win a whole lot of money. Scott Coletta. Larry Dixon. Dixon doing a brilliant job of controlling that car that wanted to go everywhere but straight. Scott Coletta won the Winston Invitational at 488, 288 miles an hour, but he hurt a lot of stuff.
Dave, Scott Coletta got out of the car and he said, now that's the way it's supposed to look at Rockingham. You got to blow them up to win here, right, Scott? You've done it before.
Yeah, that's the way we did it before, you know. Dick, he keeps his notebook, and I guess he looked back to that page. But you got the win light, that's all that counts.
It was the Champions Day here, buddy.
Well, you know, hopefully that's what it took, you know. I mean, you just go up there and do your best.
Round one of funny car competition saw lots of tire smoke. Al Hoffman beat Gary Bolger. Chuck Etchells over Gordy Bonnet. Cruz Pedregon topping Tom Hoover. And John Force beat Casey Spurlock.
Rockingham may have been the beginning of a huge clutch problem the Nitro cars faced, and hopefully in '96 we'll have it solved. The funny cars semifinal had John Force up against Chuck Etchells. Both of them pedaling their cars madly, trying to get traction. Force did it best at 544 to 63.
The only thing that may wear out today on the John Force team is his right ankle from pedaling this car. Great job at driver's race.
Man, the old heapy's right out the window. Spun the old tires, motor started revving. I thought I'd step off the gas, he'll drive around me. Cole said, like a good dance, driver's choice, stepped off and she hooked back. Motor to there, but boy,
You deep stage there at the last second.
Had to with my buddy Etch over there because he'll break your back. I know his game plan.
What dialect was that? Does anybody have any idea? Other side of the ladder, Al Hoffman and Cruz Pedregon. Again, both cars smoking the tires, and Pedregon stayed out in front with a 5:28 victory. That put him into the final round against John Force.
Remember the Winter Nationals at the top of the show? Pedregon said, I'm not bragging, but we're here to stay. We're going after Force. Well, they went after him in the final round, but couldn't catch him. Force won 25 grand with a 523, 283 at the Rock.
John Force, you look like you've been in a war, son.
Man, we had the welder at the Rock to win here. He was out the window trucking all the way down through there. Boy's earning his money, but you know, Castro, they feed us. She wounded her, boy. She had stuff lying everywhere. I'm amazed she held her that long.
We're amazed that we can even figure out what he says, but it's always a treat. Round number 2 of Pro Stock at the Rock. WJ against Larry Morgan.
Larry Morgan loves to laugh, loves to smile, and he was working a broad grin after this one. Morgan 713, 193 miles an hour, upsets WJ. Then to the starting line came Morgan and Alderman.
And Morgan's dream ended with some mechanical problems and a great elapsed time for Darrell Alderman, a 7 flat at 196 miles an hour. In the semifinals, it was the other Dodge, Scott Jeffrey, on against Bill Glidden in the Winnebago Ford.
We were astounded by Alderman's 7 flat. What could Jeffrey on do in an identical Mopar Parts Dodge Avenger? A 702, which cost him lane choice, but they were still hooping it up because, again, it would be an all-Dodge final. No points involved, but they would split a lot of money for winner and runner-up.
Scott Jeffrey got the advantage at the starting line, but was unable to capitalize on it. 703 to a 709, Alderman won.
It'd be neat if we could have a fist fight down here or something. Probably pretty unlikely, huh?
I don't know. I don't know whether I'd want to fist fight him or not, Steve. He's really been doing a heck of a job, and you know, I just got lucky around there and got the win on him. He's a heck of a teammate.
This one was for fun, wasn't it?
It was for fun, but you know how it goes when me and him get beside each other. We both want to win.
Who's buying dinner?
Well, it looks like I'll be buying dinner.
He is, Scott Jeffrey on says. Good job, man.
And I tell you what, it wasn't at Shoney's either. Pro Stock was so good at the Rock. Let's go to Atlanta as soon as it quits raining, and we'll start our recap with the Fram Nationals Pro Stock competition. We were back on Monday, Mac.
By the time we got to Atlanta, the mantra for NHRA was rain, rain, go away. Let us race on this day. Mark Osborne in the Pyro Mama Rosa pizza car was against Scott Jeffrey in round number 2.
A tremendous start by Mark Osborne. Jeffrey knew he was in trouble, and he was right. It was Osborne 7:10 to a 7:03. Ooh, a little bit of an embarrassment there for Jeffrey on.
In the semifinals, it was Osborne in the near lane against Jim Yates in the McDonald's Pontiac. Red light for Yates, and Osborne makes his first ever final round appearance.
Well, Mark Osborne obviously was wired to the tree at Atlanta, but so too was Darrell Alderman. Alderman buries Johnson on the starting line and wins at 7:06 to a 7:02. But what a thrill it was to have a new guy in the final round. Mark Osborne, Mama Rosa's beat. It was a great day.
It was not a great day for Darrell Alderman as he let the clutch out. The distributor shaft broke. He never left the line. Mark Osborne won his first ever national event title. He had to go through the entire winner's circle drill, not even having a clue is what you do.
If Mark Osborne could upset all the heavy metal in pro stock, could Gary Clapshaw maybe do the same in fiberglass in funny car? He made it to the semifinals, I believe, for the first time in the Fueler's Pleasure car, but then he ran up against brute force. And even though John had a very subpar run at 5:41, he still advanced to the final round.
In the semifinals, Casey Spurlock in the Fruit of the Loom Dodge made his presence felt up against Cruz Pedregon. The spotlight quickly switched to the McDonald's car. Joe Gibbs celebrated. Cruz won it at a 5:21.
It was dead at half track, but we're in the final round. I saw the wind light come on. It's Monday. I'm kind of slow, so I'm kind of extra pumped. Took me a while to get in the game. Now I'm in it.
And he's in it against John Force in one of the really titanic battles that takes place throughout the entire 95 season.
And neither one of these drivers performed well in the semis. We had no clue as to what to expect in the finals. Pedregon's car came off the line with the wheels in the air, set him down unloaded, smoked him, and Force won Atlanta at a 5:17-297.
Forrest, you're shooting at ducks or something here. A spark plug came right through the body. That's the wire.
Shows you how good them Autolite spark plugs are. They're just throw them out and just run on the other 8 or 7. How many's it got? 22.
You didn't beat yourself. That's the important thing.
Nah, I don't know what happened. I heard her clicking when she come off the end. She's trucking really good down. She run any good?
5:17. That was a very quick stage up there. He staged very quickly on you.
Don't mess with my buddy Cruz. He'll do damage to you.
Well, Force damaged the rest of the bunch in the points chase. Pedregon, Hoffman, Etchels, and Scusa. That's the top 5.
Top fuel. This was round number 1. Again, Kenny Bernstein versus Shelly Anderson. Remember Phoenix? Bernstein and the blonde. Well, this time Bernstein beat her, but he did it in a ball of fire. A tremendous engine explosion. About 12 quarts of oil sacrificed to the gods, but Bernstein got to round number 2, and the Budweiser King over Shelly Anderson.
They say with the engine behind the driver and a top fuel dragster that he's immune from fire. Take a look at Kenny Bernstein's gloves. The helmet is charred. Everything did its job.
Everything did its job, actually, right, Steve. The Simpson suit hung in there pretty good. A lot of fire around me that time, more than I've ever experienced in a top fuel car, and glad it wasn't a funny car.
And you won.
Well, that's good. I didn't know that. I appreciate it.
Can it be fixed?
Absolutely.
Kenny's opponent in round number 2 was Ron Capps at the wheel of the Roger Prim car. This young man is regarded by many as one of the true rising stars in the sport of championship drag racing, and Kenny Bernstein found out why at Atlanta.
Young Ron Capps, graduate of the Alcohol School of Racing, put away Kenny Bernstein. Actually, Bernstein pretty much beat himself. Capps ran 5 flat at 292 miles an hour in round number 2 to get up Earth in the final 4.
His opponent in the semis, Scott Coletta, the reigning Winston champ.
What a day for Capps. First it's Bernstein, then it's Coletta, up 496 at 276. He was really pumped up.
We should have known this guy was going to be hot when he was closest to the pin at the golf tournament. Coletta was ahead of you.
Yeah, he was. I saw him all the way. In fact, I saw his whole car about half track. Something happened. I saw him blow by. I don't know what we ran, but it nosed over again. We had a small fire, but We're going to be back.
You're going to be busy in the pits, too.
We had to change motors last round. It hurt a main bearing. We'll be back, though.
Wow, great story.
Not much time for celebrating in Winston Championship drag racing. You make your run and you go right back to work in the pit area. Larry Dixon beginning to make his mark as a contender for the top fuel crown was in the far lane. His opponent was Mike Dunn. This race was decided at the starting line as Dunn kind of double clutched the throttle pedal and went out to a red light. Larry Dixon advanced to the semis. His opponent, Corey Mack.
And Corey Mack knew, along with Scott Coletta, that they needed to start beating this kid. And he accomplished that very thing in Atlanta. 480, 302 miles an hour. You have wanted to beat that Dixon car since the beginning of the year. Am I wrong?
You are wrong. Not at all. I mean, when Snake stepped out, Dixon took over. It's the same person in the car as far as I'm concerned. He drives just like him. So it's just one for us. I mean, he's a great driver, a good kid. They're doing a great job, but if somebody doesn't stop him pretty quick, he's going to run away with this deal, and it's time somebody stopped him.
Ooh. By that, he meant that Larry Dixon is trying to dictate to his competitor on the starting line something Snake got away with for most of his career.
Ron Camp made the finals against Corey Mack. Lost another engine in the process, and Corey McClelland stopped everybody in Atlanta. 480 at 298 miles an hour. He and the coach exchanging hugs at the finish line. Lee Beard, his crew chief, over with a big smile on his face. Dixon continues to lead. Corey Mack drew closer. Dunn and Coletta are tied in third and fourth, with Kenny Bernstein fifth.
Memphis, Tennessee, home of the Blues, great barbecue, and the Mid-South Nationals. A huge crowd on hand, and I think the biggest news that came out of the 6 points race of the year, it didn't rain.
Tommy Johnson Jr. at the wheel of the Mopar. The Team Mopar dragster likes Memphis. It was here he ran 306 miles an hour. In round number one, he was up against Scott Coletta.
A very tricky racetrack. Johnson mastered it. Scott Coletta didn't. Tommy advanced out of round number one with a 5:14 at 270 miles an hour. Let's fast forward to the semifinals. Larry Dixon versus Corey McClelland. Dixon near lane, Corey Mack in the far lane. Corey Mack was really possessed a little bit about Dixon. I think you could tell that in one of the interviews we saw earlier in the show. He just really put the bit in his teeth whenever he raced the young man in the Snake's car. Corey McClelland, 480, 303 miles an hour, moved to the final round in Memphis.
You know, we're talking valuable Winston points now.
Yeah, I mean, I told these guys before this run, I said this could mean the whole thing later on down the road, 6 or 7 races from now. So this is it. We're in the final 2 in a row. Yes.
We have always marveled at how the racers can keep track of the points early in the season. Here we are less than a third of the way through. And Corey Mack's already worried about what will happen at the end of the season. His opponent in the final round, Mike Dunn, driving Darrell Gwynn's car. Corey Mack had little to worry about here as he ran a 481 at a great 307 mile an hour speed. Look at this. You talk about emotion. Corey Mack had it at Memphis.
In funny cars, the Memphis crowd got a kick out of seeing a Southern boy up against Cruz Pedregon. Jim Blake, the land speed record holder in Mississippi. But on this day, it wasn't the big budget that persevered. It was Jim Blake winning his first ever round of competition at 567-217. Cruz Pedregon took it hard at the other end. That was a car they should have beaten.
Round number 2 of Funny Car saw a rematch. This is a rivalry that continued throughout all of '95. Al Hoffman and John Force. This time, though, it was Hoffman's turn to brag. He had a great 5:17 at 294 miles an hour. The points leader out in round 2.
We talk about corporate sponsors and big budgets. Gary Clapshaw, a successful businessman, now retired, runs his fuelish pleasure on his own wallet. And at Memphis, he truly rose to the occasion. This was the semifinals against Al Hoffman. The clutch problems were obvious with the nitro cars. Clapshaw 531, 251 miles an hour, put him in the final round.
On the other side of the ladder, Gary Dencham. Dencham, a school teacher during the week, drag racer on the weekend, met up against Chuck Etchels. Again, big budgets against no budget. And when it is your day, as it was Gary Dencham's on this run, you can't be beat. 520 and 281.
Gary, tell everybody at home a technique you're using inside this car. They may not believe it.
Well, the car's leaving really good, but there's those bumps out there, and boy, we just grab as hard of the brake as we possibly can for about 300 or 400 feet. You can feel the thing kind of slow down. You let go of the brake, and it takes off like a rocket.
You're afraid to let go and spoil what you've been doing?
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you right now. I mean, I think we're giving up a tenth of a second by doing it, but right now it's being successful. We're pretty happy.
We're going to have a first-time champion no matter who wins.
You got that right, Steve.
When John Forrest was eliminated, he threw his weight behind Gary Dencham, even got him a sponsor for one round of racing, the all-important final round, Fram Autolite.
It was Gary Clapshaw winning the Gary and Gary Show final round. Lonnie Strode and the crew celebrating a 5:33 win.
First one down here to congratulate Mr. Clapshaw is Mr. Dencham. He's a fine competitor, and you've won your first national event.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's hard to believe. You know, we've been fighting certain things here, and well, Lady Luck's been on our side, I guess you could say, you know, because, geez, a lot of cars out here are quicker than us, and we ended up in the winner's circle today, so, boy, we're sure thankful for that.
Pro Stock, this is round number one. Danny Kaufman against Darrell Alderman. Alderman's car makes the move towards the guardrail, and Danny Kaufman gets a surprise upset win.
This was Pro Stock round one. Warren Johnson near lane, Mark Osborne far side. Again, Osborne, the master of the Christmas tree, won it on a hole shot. A 709 to Warren Johnson, 706.
In the semifinals, another Dodge, Scott Jeffreyon against Mark Powick. And Jeffreyon left the red light at the starting line. Powick advanced to the finals.
Where his opponent was Jerry Ekman, a luckless finalist at Phoenix. Mark Powick by more than a car length won his first race of the year at 7:19, 192 miles an hour. We could hear him whooping and hollering from half track.
All right, as we move through the season of 1995, it was the Mopar Parts Nationals at Englishtown, New Jersey. Under the lights, we had the opportunity to watch the quickest elapsed time in the history of drag racing. And who would it be? The rookie, Larry Dixon. 4:66 for a new national record.
It is bedlam down here. Don Prudhomme, Larry Dixon, after the quickest run in drag racing history of 4:66. The Snakes and Tears, I'm about there.
Oh, God, this is super. You know, what can I say? Everybody on the team, you know, what can I say? These guys are awesome. This whole crew is great. You know, I owe everything to them. They put this whole deal. Snake gave me a shot. I mean...
You're a little jealous of that? You'd like to have been in that car?
God, no, I get asked that all the time. I'm not jealous at all. I'm thrilled for him, the crew, you know, Miller, everybody that supported us. No, I'm fine with it, trust me. I mean, I wouldn't mind being in that run. But you did great.
That run was worth $50,000 of Slick 50 money as part of their World Record Club payout.
So this was one race. Blaine Johnson wasn't the #1 qualifier, but he made it to the semifinals to face off with the new record holder, Dixon. Wes Cerny had the Miller Genuine Draft car on a rail. Didn't overpower the racetrack in the heat of the day. 4.90 seconds, 292 miles an hour.
We talked about the rivalry between John Force and Al Hoffman in Top Fuel. This is the one that drew the attention of everyone. Scott Coletta and Corey McClelland. It continued all season long. Here, Corey Mack and Lee Beard fell victim to the clutch problems, as did Scott Coletta. See all the sparks coming out of that car? That was the result of seriously damaged clutch discs.
At this point in the season, racers were actually going out and trying to find 2-year-old clutch discs that were far superior to what they had available to them at this point. Scott Coletta, Larry Dixon, final round. Dixon on fire. Doesn't much matter. I don't think he even knew it. He was so pumped up. He beats Coletta 499, 281 miles an hour. There you can see it again, right out of the back of the motor.
And Coletta trailed with a 502.
Boy, you came out of that car. You must have felt a little bit of heat. You looked like a Roman candle.
I had no idea. All I seen is the whole crowd coming up on me, and I was like, oh boy, you know, I didn't have no clue. All I know is I was looking for Scott and didn't see him, and I was staying with it.
You weren't sure you'd won, I don't think. You had that look.
Oh, no way. I had no idea, especially with the fire and everything that happened. You know, the guys are on the can. I had no idea.
Snake, what a kid.
He's class act. Yeah, we're really proud of him. He just does a great job up there. You know, I just can't believe the year we're having. It's been fantastic.
A new national record and a big win at Englishtown and a big hug from the boss man.
Well, we saw a record in funny car as well, only it was for speed. No, it wasn't Kenji Okazaki in the near lane. It was Al Hoffman, far side, under the lights, E-Town, 306 miles an hour. Al, a world record at 306, number one qualifier at 497. You could take Force's mark before this is over.
Well, that's what we're shooting for. I mean, all the way around. We want his national record. We want, you know, everything he's got.
John Force has more than most people want to take, though, in the competition between Force and Hoffman in round number 2. What a race. Al Hoffman by a car length with a 518, 298-mile-an-hour charge off his 306-mile-an-hour record. But that came in the dark of the night on Friday night qualifying.
Well, Cruz Pedregon showed up at E-Town over the depression of Memphis, and he met up with Hoffman in the funny car semifinal. Hoffman made a big charge in the middle of the racetrack, but it was not enough. Cruz 520, 289 to move into the final round.
His opponent was Dean Scusa, who had defeated Whit Bazemore in the semis with a 537, a rather radical difference in elapsed times, which labeled Pedregon the favorite.
Scusa's second final round of the still young season. A big wheel stamp for Scusa, and again it unloaded the rear tires when it came down. Pedregon very, very happy with a 524, 294-mile-an-hour win.
Right after the race at Memphis, NHRA sent a letter to all Pro Stock competitors stating that nitrous oxide in any form and any type of delivery would not be tolerated in Pro Stock racing.
No matter how you might interpret the rule book. That same week, the Dodge boys took a hit. Their shop in Fairfield, Illinois was broken into, and vandals destroyed so many parts, they not only were unable to make it to Englishtown, they did not resurface for the rest of the year. The letter, the break-in, whether related or not, created a storm of controversy, the likes of which NHRA drag racing has never seen before.
It was at Englishtown that the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge was held. The 8 quickest qualified Pro Stock cars after a season of competition. It was Larry Morgan against Warren Johnson in the finals for $50,000 cash. And WJ easily took the win with a 703 at 196.
Now let's remember, the Dodges were not at Englishtown, so this could open the door for Warren Johnson to make a huge move. Even though they weren't here, they were still number 1 and number 2 in points. But in round 1, disaster struck. Warren Johnson red-lighted, no doubt due to some clutch problems, but nonetheless, he didn't make any points at Englishtown.
Bob Glidden in his Ford trying to make a move for his 11th Winston Championship was against Butch Abbott in the semifinal round.
Abbott's Bondo car suddenly became a project machine for his sponsor.
Butch probably stayed in the throttle just a hair too long. He got it out of shape, was unable to control it. It bounced off the guardrail, then it got sideways enough to where he finally flipped up on his roof, and as they say in the sport, he kind of wore the shiny off of this Oldsmobile. As dramatic as it looked on television, the car itself was not hurt that badly. The good news, of course, is that Butch Abbott was not injured.
Butch Abbott getting his blood pressure tested, and it's got to be up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure it's up a little bit.
What was your sensation in the car? You tried your darndest to keep it off the fence.
Yeah, I thought I had it under control, and then when it smacked the wall real hard, it kind of threw me around, and that's when I didn't have any steering.
And it's a shame because you were having one of your best days of racing ever.
Yeah, I really thought it was, luck was with me, and then all of a sudden now it's the worst it's been in my career.
Well, you can still smile, and that's a sign of a champion.
And the car still rolled on all four wheels, and Butch Abbott, we would see him yet again in 1995.
At Englishtown, we saw the results of Dick Maskin's hard work on the Pontiac of Jim Yates. He met Bob Glidden in the final round. I mean, the fans were on their feet for this one. And when Bob Glidden won, I could hear the roar clear at the end of the racetrack. It was absolutely a madhouse. Glidden at Englishtown. I'll tell you, Robert, the Ford fans here at E-Town are about to tear this place down.
What a day for us, Steve. We had a great weekend. It's been one of those storybook deals for us, I'm telling you.
The point standings, Darrell Alderman stayed on top. Jim Yates moved ahead of the absent Jeffrey on WJ and Mark Powick. That's the top five.
The 1995 schedule saw a brand new event at a brand new racetrack, Virginia Motorsports Park. The Virginia is for Lovers Nationals. And the racers and fans really got into the theme. Tommy Johnson Jr., top fuel pilot, got engaged right in the pits. It was so sweet. Eddie and Ursi Hill, they hosted a wedding in their pits. A couple of fans decided that'd be a nice place to have the nuptials. And Jerry Ekman and his new bride were honeymooning in Virginia. Let's get to the racing, okay?
All right, here's Connie Coletta, the American International Airways big boss man, if you want to refer to him that way. He's the wallet behind himself and son Scott. He was against Larry Dixon in round number one.
And he did his son a favor by taking out one of the top points contenders, Dixon, with a 5:01 at 275. Actually, both drivers having a horrible engine day. So Dixon was out round one for the second time in the season.
And Larry found out that it wasn't quite as easy as it may have been at the early part of the year. In the semifinals, Scott Coletta against Blaine Johnson. Scott smokes the tires. Blaine Johnson moves to the finals. Oh, an ugly-looking 5:02, but it was a final round appearance nonetheless for the Travers Tool Company car.
Could Blaine Johnson, so in command of qualifying at a number of events, finally win his first national race up against Corey Mack? Blaine did not love Virginia's for Lovers Nationals. He was beaten again. Corey McClelland in a 496 at 293 miles an hour, and he earned a lot of Winston points with Dixon out.
How about this burger car, huh?
How about that drag race?
It was a good drag race. I could hear him all the way down there. I knew he'd be on time the starting line. Just one of those things, man. I have to thank Joe Gibbs, Interstate Batteries, Shell Oil, EDS, Champion Spark Plugs, all the above. Thank you for everything.
In the point standings, Corey Mack leads over Larry Dixon by only 2 points after Virginia. Scott Coletta, Mike Dunn, and Blaine Johnson. That's the top five.
During the month of June, McDonald's was heavily promoting the Batman Forever movie, so they put a Batman body on the Cruise Pentagon funny car. But Al Hoffman clipped the Bat's wings with a 535 at 276. Riddle me this, riddle me that. Drop cylinders hurt the Bat, Cruz.
Yeah, we got our wings clipped out here, but, you know, we've raced Hoffman an awful lot. I think we've beat him all the times we've raced him this year. He's a great guy, great team, great sponsor, but just wasn't our day. But we ran awful good here, very consistent, but evidently we have not dropped cylinders in a long time, so evidently it finally caught up to us.
Now you need Force to go out.
Yeah, well, I think Hoffman's been doing good at that, so maybe Hoffman can take the boy out. Thanks.
Well, that kind of gave you an idea of what's coming up. It is John Force and Al Hoffman once again. And Pendragon most interested in seeing Force fall in defeat, but it was not to be this day in Virginia. He was smoking the tires across the finish line to a 5:22 victory over Al Hoffman.
Final round, Casey Spurlock, new king of the burnouts. A title once enjoyed by John Force at Delassen Coil made him quit doing it. No one smoked some harder or longer than Spurlock. Final round, Spurlock through the loom car near lane. Force's Castrol GTX Jolly Rancher, Pontiac bar side, and Spurlock was never in this one, not from the very beginning. Force wins it with a 5:19 at 270 miles an hour. More points.
They tell me the nightmare's over, but kiddies, it ain't. As long as you got Coyle and Bernie Federley and a Pontiac and Castrol and all them people that pay. Big Duck on the block here won. What can I say? Fram Autolite, we've done our job. Cruz is still stuck to that ceiling Batman. That's why I love him.
Well, quack, quack, John Force. You're still the leader Hoffman, Pendragon, Skuza, and Etchels. There's 5 of them on top in the Winston Chase.
Well, not to be outdone by Englishtown, Virginia had its share of excitement in pro stock qualifying. Far lane, Brad Klein, a little close to the center line, a little overcorrection, and the psychotherapist from Texas needed a little mental health advice of his own about this time. Oh, ouch.
The car ended up on all 4 wheels, but after having gone through a series of gyrations, you saw him smoke the tires as he got out of the groove. Then the car got sideways. He could not stop it from turning over. Made its way down the guardrail, and then, believe it or not, back up on 4 wheels he goes. And Brad Klein gets to whack the wall one more time before it finally comes to a stop. Some serious body damage and possibly a bit of a misalignment within the chassis, but there was nothing wrong with Brad Klein. He was in good shape, and once again, the safety safari able to roll the car off the track. You know, with the 2 Dodges not in competition, kind of opened the door to lots of folks, but one must remember that throughout this entire season, WJ has been and had been the quickest car to this point and throughout the rest of 95. Here he was in the finals in Virginia.
And getting a little nervous about Jim Yates in that McDonald's Pontiac. Yates made the final at Englishtown to be beaten by Glidden, but in Virginia, he was also beaten by Warren Johnson in the Oldsmobile. At 7:06, 196, but Jim Yates suddenly was for sure a championship contender.
You're right. Steve, it's been so long. You still working this job?
What's this? Humor? Jim Yates has got the lead over Warren Johnson. Darrell Alderman drops to 3rd. Mark Powick and Scott Jeffrey on. Warren Johnson with a laugh and a smile. I can't believe it. Look at this. More rain. We're in Columbus, Ohio now. Rains just as hard here as it does in Gainesville or Houston or you kind of pick them this year. Steve Schmidt came into his own in 95, Steve.
He sure did. The engine builder from Indianapolis who has actually a fleet of motors that move back and forth between numerous pro stock competitors found himself on Monday in the final round against WJ. Steve Schmidt, a 4.0 light to Warren Johnson's 4.5. Warren underestimated the racetrack after the rains, and Warren got himself beat by Steve Schmidt. A 7.12. Schmidt was hot.
Identical 7.12s.
Awesome. What else can I say? I want to thank, first of all, Dynagear. I couldn't be doing this without them, my family. Most of all, my crew chief, Mark Ingersoll. He was absolutely awesome this weekend.
Nobody got tired of seeing this matchup. John Force and Al Hoffman. They better not have, because it occurred a lot of times during the year. It was Hoffman's chance to try to regain some of the points on John Force. This was the final round in Columbus, and Force blew the tires off of it. It was Monday, and the fans that were on hand were thrilled to see a 5:12, 299 victory by Al Hoffman.
Thumbs up to Al. What about Top Fuel? Well, Scott Coletta, usually about this time of the year, he makes his move. In the final round, he was up against Eddie Hill, who had not made it, I don't believe, past the first round since his victory in Pomona.
Hill trouble-plagued all season long with the clutch problems that got so many other racers in trouble as well. This time a 477 win. Eddie trailing at a 488, and Scott Coletta started his march to Winston Championship number 2. The whole family on hand to celebrate at Columbus.
Kathy and Little Corey. Where are we going to go? How about Topeka? You want to go to Topeka, Mac?
Sounds good to me.
Nationals? Good. One of the best racetracks in the entire sport. This was, for the first time, however, a night affair because of the heat of the past few years. It was put at night, and guess what? A cold snap came through.
Incredibly good racing conditions. Round number 1 at Top Fuel. Larry Dixon and Corey McClelland. Corey Mack wins at a 488. This is good enough to take a look at again. This was one of those classic races. 1,000th of a second separating the two at the finish line.
You were fighting for your life in the Top Fuel points right then.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this is one of those things where it's going to come down to the end of the season. Me and the kid there, we're going to be beating each other up all year long, and he's doing such a good job. He gets me pumped up, do my job better, and my driving's been, let's say, not the best, and it's been one of those things. And kid's doing a great job. What can you say?
You won by 1/1000th of a second.
Under the lights, as Steve said, because of the heat that was normally expected in the middle of the summer. NHRA had made this an all-night event, qualifying and finals. Here is the semifinal round of competition. Kenny Bernstein against Corey Mack.
The sport takes on a whole new dimension at night. The long nitro flames licking at the wings. And in the semis, it was Bernstein. 477 put away Corey Mack. I think Kenny was a little surprised.
That was just a honey of a drag race. Your 77 beat his 75.
Oh, super. Well, sorry, Corey, but, buddy, we needed it badly. You won 3 already this year. The Bud King needs 1.
I haven't said this since last October. Kenny Bernstein, you're going to a final round.
Boy, isn't that the truth? And, hey, that's some good words to hear, believe me. We need it. I'm just happy for the guys. They worked so hard on this deal. Certainly all our people on the car. It's great to be in the final. We got some work to do, though.
Kenny Bernstein elated with that kind of performance. Topeka, one of the truly great racetracks. Look at the power wheel stand by Scott Coletta. This is one of those that could have led to a blowover, but he was able to ease it back down. Minimal damage to the front end, and Scott Coletta continued in competition to the final round where he was matched against Kenny Bernstein.
I'll tell you, in that wheel stand incident, I think his flying experience paid off. Gorgeous landing. Kenny Bernstein winless since the Winston Finals, October '94. Thought maybe this was his night. It went up in tire smoke. Scott Coletta's 482, 295 miles an hour, moved him into a virtual deadlock with Corey McClelland in the Winston points.
The points chase beginning to tighten up. Scott Coletta used the middle of the season in '94 to win his first title. He's now won 2 in a row. Dixon is third, followed by Mike Dunn and Blaine Johnson.
Funny cars under the lights on the Trick Traction compound. I love it. Whit Bazemore didn't think it was so hot that night in Topeka. A huge fire jettisoned the body. Whit, who's gone through so many of these, again survived without a scratch.
Bazemore was able to bring the car to a stop without touching anything and was able to continue on in competition. As we watched this one again in replay, shows you a massive engine explosion that literally blew the body up and off of the fast orange Dodge. Spectacular at night. The ball of fire indicating serious engine damage. There goes the body. Look at Whit. Already got the parachute out, even though he is engulfed in flames, is able to bring the car to a safe stop. Lots of stuff poured out underneath the car, got under the tires. But a masterful driving job by one of the really new great drivers in funny car competition.
Round number 2, funny cars. The sun was still up when the Batman Forever car ran up against Al Hoffman, the Riddler. It was Pedregon at 5'11", 296 miles an hour over Hoffman.
I got to do it. Riddle me this. Riddle me that. The Black Bat is back at 5'11".
5'11", we throw the kitchen sink at Hoffman. That's a tough team over there. I was in deep. We're looking for every advantage. It's the last time you'll see this Batman Forever car. I want to thank McDonald's and Joe Gibbs for putting me in this car. It's a great car, great team. We're coming around, slowly but surely.
The win by Pedregon over Hoffman advanced him into the semifinals where you can riddle everything. He's got to run John Force. And Pedregon in the all-black Batmobile, as it was referred to, took advantage of the nighttime hours, and another 5'11" at 297 as John Force went up in smoke. Long burnouts, so they were the trademark of K.C. Spurlock throughout the 1995 season. Another final round appearance for K.C., this time against Pedregon.
And again, Spurlock's car smoked the tires. Pedregon had huge problems, but further on down the racetrack and squeaked this one out with a 591 at 273 miles an hour, which wouldn't have qualified, let alone win most races. Joe Gibbs thought, hey, they all look like line drives in the box scores. He's a Bob Fry line.
Gibbs may call it a Hail Mary pass. Force, Hoffman, Pedregon, the top 3 in the Winston Chase. In Pro Stock, the final round, Pontiac and Oldsmobile, Jim Yates continued to show steady improvement. Another final round appearance against Warren Johnson here at the Western Auto Nationals. Going through the 5 speeds, Warren Johnson prevailed by about a car length, a 7:06 win to a losing 7:12, a handshake.
Warren Johnson, terrific victory over Jim Yates, a 7:06, your best of the day.
Oh, it was tough all the way getting down this racetrack. We just didn't have the right combination. This car was not happy here, but at least we won.
The Pro Stock points chase. Now WJ, Yates, and Ekman the top 3. Darrell Alderman falls to 4th. Mark Powick number 5.
The Mopar Parts Nationals on Thunder Mountain near Denver, Colorado, mark the midway point in the Pro Stock bike season. So let's quickly bring you up to date. It began at the Slick 50 Nationals in Houston. To no one's surprise, Dave Schultz, his Sunoco Suzuki, was in the final round. To a lot of people's surprise, Dave McClelland, Michael Phillips was alongside him.
Phillips riding the Bell Additives motorcycle owned by Harry Lartigue, possibly put an exclamation point on this season by giving everybody a glimpse of things to come as it related to David Schultz. It was Phillips winning his first and only national event title, a 7:63. Phillips jumping for joy.
A happy guy who was later to lose his ride. Moving on, Gainesville, race number 2 for the bikes. John Myers, Star Racing out of Americus, Georgia, in the final round against Dave Schultz. Was Schultz going to dominate again? I mean, he made the final in Houston, even though he got beat. Here he was in yet another final round. No! David Schultz, too aggressive off the starting line. He red lights. John Myers takes the money.
At Englishtown, a rematch. Myers and Schultz. A bit of redemption on the part of Schultz. 7:69 at 168, winning over John Myers.
Don't get too used to it, David. The Virginia is for Lovers Nationals, semifinals. John Smith against Dave Schultz, but that's not the story. The story will come 1,320 feet away when David Schultz, in defeating Smith, sets the national record for speed, 182.14 miles per hour on a Pro Stock motorcycle. Incredible. The final round, though, Stevie Johnson was up against Schultz.
Steve Johnson, now a teammate of John Myers, psyching himself up. He almost pulled it off, but it was Schultz, 7:59 at 180, taking the win. Schultz, though, did not have the dominance that everybody expected at the start of this season. Here in round number 2 at Columbus, he was against Russ Olmstead.
Olmstead in the near lane. Dave Schultz, far side, defending Winston champion. It was Olmstead. 781, 168 miles an hour, but a huge reaction time, 412.
Final round, John Myers, the Star Racing Wax Shop Suzuki against Russ Olmstead. The win to Myers, 770 at 175 miles an hour, and that now takes us to Denver, Colorado in the Mopar Parts Mile High Nationals.
David, I think you gave it its nickname of Thunder Mountain, but there's no facility quite like it. John Pander and his family have built, well, just a drag racing paradise. In the final round, it was Olmstead versus Myers again. And again, it was John Myers in the thin air, an 801 at 165, as George Bryce, the team owner, again tries to walk on his hands.
So at basically the halfway point in the Pro Stock motorcycle season, Schultz led Myers, followed by Phillips, Johnson, and John Smith.
In the Nitro Wars, on the mountain, the times and speeds drop off a little bit. The competition as keen as ever. Witness round number 1, Blaine Johnson versus Corey McClelland. Johnson near lane. A 493 wanted for Blaine Johnson over Corey Mack.
Round number 2, Larry Dixon and Scott Coletta. Both drivers trying to take advantage of the fact that Corey Mack was eliminated in round number 1. Scott Coletta did, 496.
This is absolutely a photocopy of 1 year ago, isn't it?
Not yet. It's getting there, but hopefully it will be.
You got into the fours. Nobody else can do that. 496.
Yeah, you know, and this kind of heat and so forth, don't win it if I can do my job.
What are you doing inside the car to help this thing hook up? Anything?
Can't tell you. I'd have to kill you.
Don't do that.
No, don't do that. That means I'd have to do this whole thing by myself. Guess what? It rained again at Denver.
Yeah, but it rains at Denver every year. A little thunderstorm always blows through over Red Rock, and nobody seems to mind. Actually, kind of refreshing. Blaine Johnson in his third final round of the year and still winless. He was up against Scott Coletta. Everybody else struggling to get out of the fives. Watch this. Johnson was out on Scott. The Dick LaHaye horsepower takes over, and he drills Johnson with a 481 at 298 miles an hour, almost 300 at almost 7,000 feet.
So Scott Coletta was the new leader after Denver. Corey Mack second. Then comes Larry Dixon, Blaine Johnson, and Mike Dunn.
Let's focus on funny car. In the thin air, not enough air goes over those rear spoilers. So the funny car pilots really struggled for control. This was round number 2. Pedregon and Force, both of them sideways. John Force's experience shows 581 at 234 miles an hour.
This thing is a little like a thrill ride at an amusement park.
Boy, she was a great white knuckler, buddy. She got loose and then thought Cruz had me. Then he got out. He got in trouble, and she come around. Then she smoked him again, and I know it was sprinkling on the burnout. And I thought, Castro, we're in big trouble here, buddy. But she kept them candles lit and smoked her right on through there. We'll take it. Was that lane choice?
Boy, he can work them sponsors in, can't he? Better than anybody.
Just slide him right in. You can't even shut him off. Again, Al Hoffman and John Force here in Denver in the finals. This was Force's day, 525 at 291 miles an hour.
Hey, Force, who's the king?
Don Verdome, never changes, never did.
I thought it was Elvis.
Elvis, him too.
I feed him the straight lines and he misses them.
He must have missed him at 1,000 feet this time, right? Here's the pro stock semifinal round. It's an all-family affair. Kurt Johnson was in the far lane, WJ in the near lane.
And let me tell you something. Kurt Johnson was not supposed to do this. He was not supposed to beat his daddy, but he did on a hole shot, a 749 to a 746. Kurt looked at me and says, I think I'm up for adoption.
Jim Yates was to be the final round opponent for Kurt Johnson. Yates in the McDonald's Pontiac trying for the first win of the year. Well, Dan Warren may not have added to his points total, but Kurt stopped Yates.
You got to be a lumberjack the way you chop down Christmas trees.
Well, after that semifinal finish, when I beat Dad, I was on the adoption list there for a minute. I'm just happy for the Oldsmobile and their Farewell Tour and Performance Parts for coming on board this year. There's not two finer companies out there. I'd like to say I wish my wife was here, and I'm so damn happy.
We're happy for you, man.
Thanks.
Warren and Jim Yates continue to lead in the points chase. Ekman is in third. Kurt Johnson comes up number 4th, and 5th, Steve Schmidt.
Ah, yes, the beautiful wine country of Northern California, Sonoma, and the Autolite Nationals, a brand new timing tower for the first time in years. Boy, and they needed one. Pat Austin, the Syntec Special, was having a horrible year until he got to Sonoma and made it to the semifinals.
In that semifinal round match, it was Corey McClelland trying to regain the Winston points lead. He had to get past Pat Austin. He had him covered handily. And then something went wrong, and Pat Austin squeaked by with a subpar 523 to take the win and advance into the final round. Again, clutch problems prevailed. You saw the sparks coming out of the McDonald's car.
About $10,000 worth. The other half of the semis. It was Mike Dunn, far lane, Scott Coletta, near lane. Dunn had the advantage. Dunn seized the moment at 493, 297 miles an hour. And let me tell you what, he got an instant fan club of Larry Dixon and Corey McClelland for doing that.
The final round, Mike Dunn was in the near lane. It was Pat Austin in the far lane. We were in Sonoma, California. As Steve pointed out, the new tower gives you a bit of a different perspective on this track. But he had no problems finding the finish line, did Mike Dunn. 5:10 at 276. Maybe not the quick time, but the big win.
And it was the first anniversary of Frank Bradley as crew chief on this car, a record for Bradley working for any team. They ambushed him right there, the far end of the racetrack. Bradley got a bat at Sears Point.
Funny car competition, round number 1. The McDonald's Pontiac now back in the familiar Golden Arches red and gold livery against Quint Bazemore.
Bazemore having his best season ever, kept the body on it, no fire, the oil still in the crankcase, a 520 at 295 miles an hour, moved him into round number 2. Al Hoffman, he could smell a championship. Force wasn't dominating. This was earlier. Watch the Hoffman car, the right-hand side of your screen. Unbelievable. We have liftoff. We have liftoff again. A punishing wheel stand that should have destroyed that car, and believe it or not, it still made it to the final round.
Again, John Force and Al Hoffman. This is a litany that repeated itself throughout the entire season. After that giant wheel stand, Hoffman and his crew chief Tommy Anderson able to regroup. A 5:30 to a 5:33, a fitting conclusion to a great day for Al Hoffman.
Well, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, the Pro Stock final was, you're right, WJ up against Jim Yates, Pontiac against Oldsmobile. Yates a little advantage off the starting line. Would it be enough? Oh, it was just what the doctor ordered. Yates at 7:14, beat Warren Johnson 7:13. Tony Yates, Dick Mask and the crew, their first one of the year. Let's have another look. Yates won it by 5/1000ths of a second. You can't even blink your eye that quickly. Yates, well, he was like an uncaged animal when he finally got out of that McDonald's Pontiac at the far end of the racetrack. It was a wonderful moment.
The reason he moved into the points lead over Warren Johnson with that win. KJ's third, Ekman and Schmidt, number 4 and 5. And guess what it did at Seattle?
It rained.
And it rained some more.
And then it rained on Monday.
And finally, we got to the championship round of the Northwest Nationals on Tuesday.
Dick LaHaye had the best line before they got beat. He said, this is like the first round.
It was Corey McClelland trying to make a move on Scott Coletta in the points. His opponent, trying for his first ever national event victory, was rookie Ron Capps at the wheel of the Roger Prim dragster.
Capps made it to the finals in Atlanta, only to be denied. But not in Seattle. The tricky racetrack bit Corey Mack. Ron Capps, a stellar job to bring that team its first ever NHRA national event victory. They are still in Seattle, still celebrating. Unbelievable.
In round number 1, a funny car competition on whichever day it was conducted, John Force ran into a rejuvenated Casey Spurlock.
Force said later, where did that come from? Spurlock uncorks low elapsed time of the day, a 5:12 at 287 to just flat out run John Force.
For the second time this year, Gary Densham made the final round. His opponent was Al Hoffman at Seattle.
Tommy Anderson had moved the engine forward in the Hoffman car to prevent the wheel stands like we saw at Sonoma. And it paid off. Hardly a steering adjustment on the way down the track. Hoffman won it at 5:20, 285.
I hope John will believe me now that the nightmare's over. I mean, we're coming after him, and we're serious.
The winningest driver in NHRA history, Bob Glidden, was trying to spoil the day for Warren Johnson. WJ was trying for win number 50 at the wheel of his Oldsmobile. Glidden and his Ford gave it all he had, but it wasn't near enough as Warren Johnson blew past at the finish. 7:02 at a great 197.
Congratulations, your 50th Pro Stock victory.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'll tell you, I knew Bob was going to be awful hungry for his another win, and we needed this one to remain in contention for the championship, and I'll tell you, we're working at it just like everybody else.
You're leaving here with a points lead.
Well, finally, it's not much of a lead, but it's a lead.
You'll take it.
When the Dodge boys dropped out, Warren Johnson and Jim Yates kind of swapped that lead several times throughout the rest of the year. KJ, Ekman, and Schmidt continue to hold third through fifth.
All right, Vacation Land, the Champion Auto Stores Nationals in Brainerd, Minnesota. After everybody got through fishing and hiking and seeing all the Paul Bunyan attractions, it was time for Top Fuel round number 2. Scott Coletta versus Mike Dunn. Dunn already a winner on the circuit. Dunn puts away Scott Coletta. A 495 to a 499 on what was a very difficult racetrack. But Frank Bradley, his crew chief, seemed to have it all in hand.
Dunn defeated Corey McClelland in the semifinals to move to the championship round against Tommy Johnson Jr.
TJ beat Eddie Hill in the semifinals. If Mike Dunn could win race number 3, he would suddenly be a points factor. Tommy Johnson did everything he could to regain traction. Nothing worked. Mike Dunn picked it up with a 493 at 295 miles an hour. These guys could start to smell something good was happening.
They say opposites attract. Well, that's what happened in the 95 season in Funny Car. Al Hoffman and John Force at Brainerd once again, this time in round number 2. One of the best shows in motorsports, John Force against Al Hoffman. A smoking tire problem for Hoffman put him out.
We'll be back. We ain't giving up yet. It ain't over.
Again, Gary Dencham makes his way to the final round to race his nemesis, John Force. Dencham still looking for win number 1.
In the early days of John Force's career, Gary Dencham helped him so many times. In fact, probably saved him. He might not have become a professional drag racer without Dencham's help. And to this day, Force gladly repays that, but not on the racetrack. Force, 528, 291. Got the points from Hoffman.
I'd still be in Australia trying to swim back if it wasn't for Dencham.
Some truth to that.
Force leads Hoffman after Brainerd. Then Pedregon, Etchells, and Scusa. That's the top 5.
Well, this was becoming a very familiar sight. Jim Yates and Warren Johnson in the final round, but this time, wonder of all wonders, it was WJ that got the whole shot and put away Yates, a 720 to a 719. Yates missed his big chance here to make a move in the point. Indianapolis Raceway Park, the biggest drag race in the world. NHRA's U.S. Nationals. Mac, we've been going there for years, but it's still a thrill.
I've been there every year since 1961, and if you have to make one race a year, this is it. The U.S. Nationals. Why? Because people like Lewis Warden, driving the Ashen Warden Oldsmobile, can rise to the occasion. Here it was in round number 1 against Jim Yates, who is in contention at this point for the Winston title. Yates broke right at the starting line, and the surprise of the meet, Lewis Warden advanced into round number 2 with a time off pace a bit at a 7:35. Yates behind the wall.
Boy, bad luck doesn't even begin to describe this deal.
Ooh, I tell you, I don't know what happened to it. Seems like something in the rear end housing broke.
That's exactly what happened. The final round, Warren Johnson against, not Jim Yates, Lewis Warden took care of that. It was Lewis Warden himself. Johnson looking for his 5th U.S. Nationals title, 4 in a row. Warden was away first. It looked like the upset of the century, but it was not. Warren Johnson won at 7:05, 197. Quite emotional.
I see a sigh of relief more than a smile.
I'll tell you, 4 in a row, this is absolutely unbelievable. U.S. Nationals, Indy, everything that it means more to us, GM Performance Parts, Oldsmobile, AC Rochester Products, Delco Battery, everybody involved that gets this car to the racetracks, gives us the opportunity to do this.
4 in a row, unbelievable. Congratulations, Professor.
The biggest race of them all, and what a win streak for WJ. The Big Bud Shootout is conducted at Indianapolis, a $100,000 payday awaiting the winner of the race between Pedregon and Hoffman. And Al Hoffman picks up the big bonus bucks again. 5:13 is winning time at 299 miles an hour. $100,000 from Budweiser paid to Al Hoffman, winner of the Big Bud Shootout.
Big bucks for Al, and big bucks were spent by Colonel Larry Minor. Watch the Geronimo Oldsmobile at the far lane. Tony Pendergun at the wheel. Keep your eye on the body. The all-time hang time records for a funny car body. Tony Pendergun was A-OK. He scrambled out of the thing in case it was on fire. They later retrieved the body, and it was, as you might imagine, badly damaged. Let's have one more look at it, the body in particular. Once it gets there, it traps it, Mac.
It does, and lifts it right off, and as it deploys, it drug the parachute out with it. And while Pendergun had some fire in his face, that is Tony Pendergun, by the way, he was not injured in the incident. Checked over by the medical staff, the safety safari. Just part of the racing Pendergun family. Frank Jr., Tony, and of course, most familiar with Cruz. Al Hoffman was really going for the big bucks. He'd have picked up another 100,000 plus if he would have been able to have won the U.S. Nationals title. But he smoked the tires against Mark Oswald in round number 1.
Al, I have a feeling you would trade that $100,000 you won yesterday for a sack full of Winston points today. That's not going to happen.
Nah, that's for sure. But, well, it's not over yet. I mean, we hated to lose in the first round here. It happened to last year against Oswald, too. But something happened with the tires there. I could feel it on the burnout. And if you look at them right now, I mean, one tire is half off the rim. So it just shook real hard, and it wasn't going to go anywhere.
Sorry to see you out. In the Big Bud shootout on Sunday, Cruz Pendergun took out John Force with a 300-mile-an-hour blast. Force was not happy about that and hoped to get a little revenge in the final round of the U.S. Nationals, not to mention that 100,000-plus payday you were talking about, Dave. Force far lane, Pendergun near lane. Pendergun. Yet another 304-mile-an-hour run at 5:07. Most importantly, he wins Indy again. The McDonald's team has had huge success here.
We knew we had something for John Force. I'll tell you what, he's a great champion, but it's McDonald's time. He's beat us up plenty. I'm a little bit, got to calm down a little bit, wearing my Raiders helmet. John Force is a heck of a champion, but we were going for it that final round because we said, hey, I don't care if he's dropping cylinders, that car can run an O. So we kind of went for it. We were going to sacrifice smoke in the tires to win Indy for my 3rd time in 4 years. I'm really happy. Joe Gibbs, McDonald's Interstate Battery, EDS, all of our Pontiac champion, everybody for being involved with this team. This is a great feeling. I can't tell you how good this feels.
Well, he tried awful hard, I got to tell you. Cruz Pendergun celebrating. Talk about celebrations. These are the guys from Canada. They come down every year with some sort of a float. This year it was the Top Fuel Alcohol Sofa.
Now, if you think this is just a burnout by Wayne Bailey, you're mistaken. Keep watching. Burnout's over. Wayne's going to back up, right? Wrong. Wayne's got himself a problem. Like the car won't shut off. It won't even slow down with the shootout. It's still picking up speed. Now watch this piece of driving. I'm going to shut up. Wayne Bailey's 15 minutes of fame. The motor was still running in the sand trap. Other than hyperventilation, he was okay. Wayne says, shut this damn thing off.
And the only way they could do it was eventually squirt some fire extinguishing compound into the injectors that shut the engine off. Wayne Bailey was not injured in the incident, but he spun it out intentionally to back it into the sand trap.
Darn fine job. Round number 1, Tommy Johnson Jr. versus Scott Coletta. Coletta in the points lead. Coletta goes out round number 1 when Johnson shut off. Scott Coletta was so angry that he was gone within minutes after that loss.
Bob Vandergrift Jr. returned to the drag racing wars with his new sponsor, Jersey's Sportswear, and with his crew chief, Dan Olson. Made it to the semifinals where his opponent, the super hot Mike Dunn in the La Victoria Salsa car.
When Scott Coletta out round 1, everybody wanted to get those points, Mike Dunn included. Mike Dunn appeared headed to his 4th win of the year, but no. From behind came Vandergrift Jr. at 49300.
The comeback kid, the Cinderella story, call it what you want. You're in the final round at Indy. Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. I mean, we're so excited. Our first race back. My guys are doing a tremendous job. And for all of our teammates back in Alexander City, this one's for you guys.
I'll give you a pat on the back for a good reaction time, too.
Oh, thanks a lot. It's coming around. I'm starting to feel more comfortable. One more.
Wow, is his new sponsor happy?
And part of his success was due to having old clutch discs. He sat out most of the season. He had a dozen discs from a couple of years ago, and they really worked well.
Larry Dixon was working well throughout all of 1995. This was the semifinal round against Rance McDaniel at the U.S. Nationals. By a thousandth of a second, Dixon got lane choice over Vandergriff.
Been coming here with my dad since 1971, and to be able to get a chance to be in the finals here at the big go, I'm thrilled to death.
And you got lane choice.
Yeah, I can't say enough for Wes Ernie and the whole Miller crew. They're doing a heck of a job.
In 1994, Bob Vandergriff Jr. was the NHRA Rookie of the Year. In 1995, that honor would end up with Larry Dixon.
Vandergriff was in front when his parachute deployed. Dixon won Indy for the Snake. Rusty Wallace celebrating with him. 493, 293 miles an hour. I'll tell you, I think Vandergriff could have won this race, Mac.
He had the advantage at the starting line. Dixon ran 493 on this run, but Vandergriff was definitely challenging all the way to the point that the parachute deployed. When that happened, Dixon squirted ahead, not to be caught, as Vandergriff had to sit back and wonder what could have happened had that parachute not come out at half track, and he was forced to sit there and watch as Larry Dixon, the rookie, won the biggest race of them all.
I'm just happy. I want to say hi to my dad. Hope he's watching. My mom, too. I love you both.
On to Reading, a little country racetrack with big-time pavement. The Pioneer Keystone Nationals. Everybody's expecting this is where the big numbers would come. Well, the big rain came instead.
It rained here, and it delayed action until the dark of the night. And the fans that stuck around, and there were tens of thousands of them, got a real treat in the final round. It was Scott Coletta against Larry Dixon.
For all intents and purposes, this was the Winston Championship. Scott Coletta, 480 at 298 miles per hour.
And as you can see, Larry Dixon bit by the clutch bug.
Let's go to funny cars. The semifinals, John Force and Cruz Pedregon, head-to-head, toe-to-toe, one more time, side-by-side burnouts.
What a show it was at Reading, Pennsylvania. The Pioneer Electronics Keystone Nationals saw Force and Pedregon stage a great race, and Force pulled away at the end of the track to a win at 5:20.
John Force, you're like an old bull. When you see red, you go after it. You deep staged every trick in the book.
I love that kid, and I love eating McDonald's, but I love Pontiac and my boys more in Castrol. And yeah, I went. I put in deep, and I could no coil was thinking, what the hell is he doing? He's going to drive through it. Just wanted to get the edge. I thought we both might run a number, but she hunted around, did her thing. Boy, them old points are looking a little sweeter here, Stevie.
And you got lane choice, buddy.
Well, she didn't run like she should have, and it got loose at the other end, but hey, it's a drag race, and he's a heck of a guy, Cruz is.
Stevie, what is this?
Hey, took 10 years off my life. Let me tell you, Chuck Edgels knows John Force's playbook. They match race together quite often around the country. The little deep stage techniques, the little blip to the throttle to rattle the other guy, ain't gonna work against Edgels.
Oh, they're both loose. And it was Edgels that recovered first. Maybe the match race skills honed on tracks around the country paid off for Chuck on this one. The time, a 6:12. The concern, who cares? Nobody. The win going to Edgels. Look at this. They're both all over the racetrack, on and off the throttle.
Oh, they're more fun to watch like this. Skillful driving paid off for Edgels. One time, John Force embarrassed Edgels by giving him a big kiss. Edgels didn't like that, but he thought, what the heck? Here's my chance to pay him back. Force just took it as a sign of affection.
Paul Rabeshi Jr. had a wild ride in qualifying at Reading. The rear brakes lock it up, put him nose first into the guard wall, almost over. But it came down hard on the rear tires. Paul Raveschi came out of this one okay, just barely missing the car that was lined up alongside of him.
But when it got time for the final round, it was the old professor, Warren Johnson, just stacking up those points and appeared headed for a championship.
His opponent, the Summit Racing Oldsmobile, driven by the cowboy, Mark Bowing.
Warren Johnson didn't even need his best reaction time of the year, a .41. He whipped up on Powell with a 7:06, 195 miles an hour. When I talked to Warren, you could see the points pressure diminishing.
You were wired to that Christmas tree, a 414 light.
Well, we knew Mark is hungry. He's been having excellent lights all day. We've been having mediocre lights all day, so I had to do my part because the crew sure did theirs.
You wanted a 6 to polish him off with. You didn't get it, 705.
It won. That's all that matters. That's a big part of it. 6 would have been fine, but winning is more important.
And you can see the sigh of relief from Warren Johnson. Does this look familiar? This is Topeka. We're back again, this time in the fall at the Sears Craftsman Nationals. It was in qualifying that Blaine Johnson in the far lane had one of those giant power wheel stands. The car was repairable, but was never the same.
Here's a pretty shot from round one. Watch Corey Mack. He didn't think it was so pretty. He feels the tires come loose. Now he's squeezing in and out of the throttle, grabbing the brake, doing everything he can, but it's not enough. Pat Austin goes on to take this round one matchup. In round number two, Larry Dixon possibly made one of the few mistakes of his rookie season. He red-lighted in the near lane. The chassis flexed, and that may have contributed to it. Mike Dunn also had a big engine fire, but he advanced.
In the final round, Scott Coletta, who'd already come close to clinching his Winston title, was against Mike Dunn. And Coletta continued to march on to his second straight crown at a 475.
And let's remember in qualifying, Scott Coletta clicked off the quickest elapsed time in history, 466, quicker even than Larry Dixon's, but Dick LaHaye didn't figure out how to back it up.
The points, Coletta, McClelland, Dunn, Dixon, and Johnson, the top 5 in Top Fuel.
Okay, funny car, semifinals. John Force and Cruz Pedregon. I don't have a tally on it, Dave, but how many times did these two go head-to-head in 95?
This could well have been the best race in funny car competition. For the first time, side by side, 300-mile-an-hour runs. Pedregon wins it a 5:07 at 300. Force trails at a 5:07 at 3:02. The advantage off the starting line, just a few thousandths of a second. The margin of victory when you hit the finish stripe went to Pedregon by 4 thousandths of a second, and both of these cars over 300.
What a comeback. We struggled all weekend. We're back on it now.
What a great race.
Probably the understatement of the evening, Steve.
Al Hoffman smoking those hides. He was next to challenge Pedregon. This was the final round. Hoffman driving through the clutch dust. He was in it, but not quite enough. Pedregon drifts out close to the wall. They couldn't even notice. They won. 5:06, another 300-mile-an-hour blast. But at the far end, hey, let's stay friends, right? What a competitor, Al Hoffman. Never gives up.
Like Larry Dixon before him in Top Fuel, Jim Yates red lights away his chance against Warren Johnson in round number 2. Then in the semifinals, WJ against Steve Schmidt.
Schmidt just seems to have WJ's number. They both run 7:06, but Schmidt gets the win. The second time he beat Warren Johnson in 95. So when the finals rolled around, the Johnsons and Yateses of the world were long gone, Mac.
It was an infrequent final round appearance for Jerry Ekman here at Topeka 2. His opponent was Steve Schmidt, and the good fortune that got Ekman to the final round did not last for another 1,320 feet. Schmidt won it at a 7:07, 194-mile-an-hour speed.
The 7:07 has won it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. This Dynagear Oldsmobile obviously has ran tremendously all day. I want to thank all the guys back at the shop. I always forget to thank them, and they're really the most important part of this deal. They're the ones that work 70, 80 hours a week to make this deal happen.
So Warren Johnson but has clinched the Winston title, followed by Yates, Kurt Johnson, Jerry Ekman, and Steve Schmidt.
There's only one all-concrete quarter mile. You'll find that at Billy Myers, Texas Motorplex, the Chief Nationals, next to the last race of the year. This was it, round 2, Scott Coletta versus Larry Dixon. If Coletta won the race, he clinched the championship. Dixon up in smoke. Scotty makes his dreams come true for the second year in a row at a 5:04. 2:57 is all. In a ball of fire, Scott, you've clinched your second Winston championship.
I don't know what to say. You know, the win's spectacular. To get the round win on fire, hey, whatever it takes, you know. Kid over there, he's tough all the time, and, you know, shouldn't have done what I did, but, hey, we won the championship.
The opponent for Scott Coletta in the final round, Blaine Johnson. So Dick LaHaye, after having a lot of work to get ready for this race, came back with a final tune-up for Scott Coletta at Dallas.
It had to be time for Blaine Johnson to win. How many times can you qualify number 1? How many final rounds can you be in? But shades of John Force. He's going to be a bridesmaid for a while after that one. Scott Coletta whooped up on Blaine Johnson. A 471. Nice. At 306 miles an hour. The Chief Nationals Top Fuel winner and Winston champ.
John Force was also looking to clinch his Winston crown at the Motorplex in Dallas in the Chief Nationals. His opponent in round number 2 was Gary Clapshaw. Clapshaw mounted little challenge as Force clinched it with a 5:13.
John, you could go home right now and not come back and still have your 5th Winston championship. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's a real good feeling, and you know, a lot of things happen out here, and well, he lost a rear main on the last run, and we had to switch motors and come back, and Cole said, we'll run her soft for this lap, and then I said, but make her run at the other end, and they said on the radio she ran over 300, but long time coming, 5. Feel great, don't know what to say, just thanking Castro and Pontiac and all the people that supported us.
The first 300 of the weekend for Force, somewhat subdued after winning his Winston title. He moved to the finals to race Chuck Edgels. Maybe clinching the Winston crown had an effect on him, Steve.
Edgels qualified in the 4s, got his first 300-mile-an-hour blast in Dallas. Force up in smoke. Edgels gets the paycheck. 5:04, 3:01. What a performance, 5:04.
Oh, wow. Tim, Medlin, Kim, the whole crew, hats off to them. They did a great job. I don't know what to say. It's been quite a weekend.
Robert Patrick at the wheel of the Billy Ewing car was the surprise of Pro Stock at Dallas, Steve.
That's right. Mainly an NHRA racer came in to drive the car as a favorite. Didn't even have his name on the door. But look at this. Robert Patrick hole shots his way to a 7:07 win to Warren Johnson 7 flat.
So with Kurt Johnson now the remaining family member to hold up the Johnson honor against Robert Patrick in the Ewing car, as Dan Warren fell to the hole shot. Of course, WJ having clinched the Winston title practically. Kurt Johnson was able to do what his dad could not, and that is defeat the surprising Robert Patrick at a 7:04 at 195, and the trophy goes to son Kurt Johnson.
As we roll on into Pomona, California for the Winston Select Finals, the last race of the year, let's bring you up to date on the Pro Stock Motorcycles, the middle of their season. It was at Brainerd, Minnesota, when John Myers squared off with John Smith. If Myers could win this, he could take the points lead from David Schultz. Myers, the Snap-on Suzuki out of Star Racing, Americus, Georgia. Identical reaction times for both riders. But at the far end, it was the big George Bryce horsepower that just eked it out at 763, 174 miles an hour. They now have the points lead, and we're loving it. Jackie Bryce getting hoisted into the air.
Myers, Schultz, Phillips, Smith, and Johnson. That was the top 5 after Brainerd. We moved on from there to the Wax Shop Finals. Race within a race, if you will, at Indianapolis, with the big bucks posted for the quickest qualified motorcycles after a season of racing. And the two protagonists throughout this entire season met in the final round. David Schultz was in the far lane, John Myers in the near lane, and once again, Myers was the winner 7:56 at 175 miles an hour.
And again, David Schultz has never won the Wax Shop Desk. Virtually an annuity for that guy, John Myers. But come Monday of Labor Day weekend, when the Pro Stock Motorcycle final rolled to the starting line, neither Dave Schultz or John Myers were anywhere to be found, Matt.
No, they were looking on as we all were live on TNN to watch Rick Ward and John Smith do battle. And for the first time in his career, Rick Ward won a national event, and it was the biggest of them all, a 767.
It's going to take a long time to sink in. We're just glad we could do it today with our sponsors here. That's the bottom line.
We're very happy for you.
Thank you.
Okay, semifinal time at the Pioneer Keystone Nationals in Reading, Pennsylvania for the Pro Stock Motorcycles. It was John Myers over in the far lane, and we show you this for a very good reason. Full gas near side, that isn't the reason. John Myers tucked low behind that ferry, a brand new national lapse time record of 7:46 for John.
7.46 that time.
46. That was our friend Alan Reinhardt, Mike's side at the other end, laying away John Myers.
I think John's reaction told the story there. This was the final round in Reading. It was the teammates Steve Johnson and John Myers doing battle. And this time Myers won it, but not quite as quick. 7:51 at 177, and if you'll note, the crew didn't jump up and down quite as much as they did in the previous round.
Okay, Topeka Pro Stock Bike semifinal. Myers and Schultz, and again, Dave Schultz, red light. That bike reacts so quick to his touch, he's just got to back it down in 96. Myers all but clinches the title, goes on to win the final round. One happy, happy guy. At Pomona, Steve Johnson was in the near lane, and he red lighted away his chances. He had to do something. John Myers had much the better motorcycle. Steve Johnson and Larry Dixon are roommates. Do you think they had a little fun this year?
Myers, the Winston champion. Take a look. See where your favorite finished in the 1995 Pro Stock Motorcycle standings.
Well, for Pro Stock Automobiles at Pomona, the final round came down to Warren Johnson and Steve Schmidt. What a season Steve Schmidt had. No games being played on this starting line.
Schmidt moving towards the center line, had to lift ever so slightly. Warren Johnson on a great 7:02, 196 pass, clinched it all.
I'm really happy for this thing. We've had 13 wonderful years at Oldsmobile. A final tribute to them winning this race. It's been unbelievable, and we're looking for the future with Pontiac.
It'll be a new Pontiac for Warren Johnson next year. Yates finished second, followed by Kurt Johnson. There's the remainder of the top 10 in Pro Stock Winston points, Jason.
In funny car qualifying, well, this was the incident of the year, no question. Watch the McDonald's car in the near lane. A more violent blower explosion you'll never see. Parts of the car crossed over the racetrack and hit the Ray Higley car. On the return road, Gary Clapshaw towing back was distracted by the accident. His funny car ran into the back of his van. It was the first three-car crash in NHRA history.
Pedregon came out okay. He had his bell rung, though, and here's why. Look at the massive explosion. Literally disintegrated the supercharger. The body ripped off. It goes across. There is where it hit the Ray Higley car. Poor Ray Higley just there minding his own business saying, what happened?
I talked to Cruz afterwards. He does not even remember this tremendous driving job. Cruz has some experience in dirt track cars, midgets and so forth, and it showed right there. A tremendous job of trying to keep the car itself out of Ray Higley's lane and off the wall. He had another blower explosion during elimination, so by the time the final round came along under the lights, the Batman for everybody was back.
It was on display in a hospitality center in the pit area. They pressed it into service against Al Hoffman. And in one of the truly great races of the day, Al Hoffman won it with a 5:06.
I've won this one. This one was for my mother back in Connecticut. I've been trying to win one for her and say it all year. This was for you, Mom.
John Force won the Winston title. There's the top five. The bottom half of the top 10 finds Dean Scusa finishing in the 6th spot with Jim Epler, number 10.
Here in the first round of the Budweiser Classic for top fuel dragsters, watch Corey Mack, far side. Watch his rear tires as they cease to exist. Both blew up simultaneously. But in the final round for $100,000, it was Larry Dixon up against Scott Coletta. Coletta red-lighted away the $100,000. Dixon, what a season, along with his Rookie of the Year honors that paid $20,000.
And Larry Dixon made it to the finals of the Winston Select Finals against Blaine Johnson. But can you believe it? At the last race of the year, Blaine Johnson won his first ever title with a 468.
Gosh, it's unbelievable. We've been trying so hard this year, and nothing ever seemed to go our way, and today was perfect.
What a way to end the year for Blaine Johnson, who finished 5th in the Winston standings. Number 10, 5-time champion, was Joe Amato.
And during that final, another emotional side. After 32 years as NHRA's chief starter, Buster Couch will retire to the comforts of the control tower as race director. But looking back over this long, illustrious career, how many great and brave calls did this man make?
Our congratulations to the 1995 champions, John Myers, Warren Johnson, John Force, and Scott Coletta, 2nd in a row in Top Fuel. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClelland. Hope you've enjoyed 95.